Some men call it
that attunement, inviting the consciousness of God into us, helps God and Guru create a channel. Our identifications need to become less so that we can feel His presence that is already there.
no passive stone. Stand up.
Good morning, everyone. So today's topic is a question that I think we've all asked at some point or the other. I certainly have many times. And that is, if God is omnipresent, and if He's omniscient, and if He knows everything, why is it so darned hard to find evidence of His presence or a clear-cut definition of how He intervenes in our lives? We all want that. At the essence of all of our prayers is a thought that goes something like this. It says, God, please make all of these people love me. Please give me at least enough money to not worry about it. And please keep me perfectly healthy until I drop dead. Is that too much to ask? You know, that's at some level, all of our prayers amount to that particular funnel of thought. And yet, we have all of these great scientific instruments. We have telescopes that can literally reach back into the furnace of creation and look back 13 billion light years away. And we have these staggering microscopes that can literally look at an electron, and particle accelerators, and that can look at smaller things still, and we can see everything in between. We have audiometry that can look deep into the earth and at the ocean floor, MRIs that can look into the brain, and X-rays that can cut to the bone. But nowhere has somebody pointed to a photographic film or a waveform on a piece of paper saying, you see that thing right there? That is God. We have all of these sophisticated philosophies across thousands of years, but in none of those philosophies has a connection been made that says A equals B, B equals C, and therefore God has to exist. It's not been done. From an operational, more individual perspective too, say, Lord, I am going through a difficult time now. Why haven't I seen evidence of your intervention in my life? I exaggerate a little bit, of course, but I wish to make a point through my exaggeration. It is certainly true that when we are in the presence of nature and that great peace steals over us, or when we see refined art or hear refined music, when we give or receive unselfish compassion, the smile of a baby, in all of these things, our consciousness rises up to a kingdom, as Jesus put it, that is not of this world. And it goes beyond the transactional and problem consciousness that we are usually mired in. And we glimpse something that is far greater. But in general, for most of the time, for most of us, our experience is that God is a little bit hard to find. His presence is fleeting, and most frustratingly, it's a little unpredictable. If there were a specific time of day, if there were a specific sequence of movements and attitudes that I can go through that guarantees that I feel that presence, it would be so much better. But that sadly is not always the case. It gets better over time, but in general, that's not the case. That's fine. We all know that. I just repeated what's all of our experience, but I say that in the context of what I'm about to say. And that is, all saints, all scriptures tell us exactly the opposite. Not just kind of the opposite, but exactly the opposite. Talking to God is very simple. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, He said all of these beatitudes and all these beautiful things. And He's asked people not to judge each other. And then He says, it's so simple. Ask, and ye shall receive it. Seek, and ye shall find it. And knock, and it shall be opened unto you. He says, it is that simple. And there is a very powerful verse in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 10, verse number 20, and in Sanskrit it sounds something like this. And remember, whenever I speak the Gita in Sanskrit, these are almost certainly the words that Krishna spoke to Arjuna, because it's been preserved unchanged since then. And it goes something like this. It says, Aham Atma Gudha Kesha Sarva Bhuta Ashaya Sthitaha Aham Adischa Madhyam Cha Bhutanam Anta Eva Cha. Aham Atma Gudha Kesha Sarva Bhuta Ashaya Sthitaha I am Adischa Madhyam Cha Bhutanam Anta Eva Cha. And what it means is a word for word translation of the relevant parts. The word used is ashaya, asha. That means whatever I desire, whatever I aspire to, whatever I seek, God is saying, I am at the center of your want, your desire, your aspiration. In other words, if I think I want something, somewhere deep down, it is an expression of me wanting God. So Swami Kriyananda translates this as, I dwell in the heart of all creatures. All creatures, no matter what they want, the hyena looking for a carcass to me seeking communion with one of the masters, they are all expressions of the same archetypal desire to know God. So how much closer can it be? It's easy. Seek and ye shall find me. I'm at the heart of all of your desires. And the way Yogananda put it is, God wants you far more than you want him. He's the nearest to the near, the dearest of the dear. And in this framework of the testimony of saints and scriptures, if we examine our own experience where God's presence is fleeting, unpredictable, somewhat dissatisfying, and not exactly answering a different question that we really didn't want to ask and didn't honestly want to deal with the answer. So how do we reconcile this discrepancy? That's the heart of, does God hide himself? Does God hide the truth? There is a very wonderful episode in the epic Mahabharata which sheds some light on this topic. Mahabharata, as you know, is an ancient Indian epic. It's gigantic. It's 7 times bigger than Iliad and Odyssey combined. And it describes an apocalyptic war that happened between the forces of good and evil. And the hero of this entire tale is a man named Arjuna. And being the hero, he's obviously on the side of the good, known as the Pandavas. And it is his job to lead the fight against the bad people, the Kauravas. Now, the Kauravas are a legion, it is said. There are far more of them than there are the good people. And there are very powerful people there. So Arjuna knows that he needs magical weapons. The skill that he has is not up to the task. He needs magical weapons. So he decides to go into the forest to the base of the Himalayas, and there is a wonderful little mountain there called Indrakila, and he founds a beautiful meadow there. And he said the steward, the patron saint of all of these magical weapons is the great god Shiva. Great god translates in Sanskrit is Mahadeva. Say Shiva, Mahadeva, they're all the same thing. So Arjuna goes into this forest and begins to pray to Lord Shiva to seek his grace. To get him the magical weapons. And he performs austerities, he purifies his body of all the toxins, his mind is rid of the restlessness, his meditation gathers steam, what starts out as 2 or 3 hours of meditation per day. 2 or 3 hours of meditation per day every day is actually very hard. Some of us went to Living Discipleship recently. It's a program at the Ananda Meditation Retreat, where we, during the end of it, we were only meditating for about 5 hours a day. That's hard pace to sustain, but Arjuna's discipline is so great that eventually he's meditating 24 hours a day. He's just sitting there chanting Om Namah Shivaya. His mind, body, heart is purified of everything, and there is a great stillness that not only is in his mind, but is reflected in the forest around him. And he begins to feel a great presence, which is so powerful, so filled with love that he's overwhelmed. He's about to touch the hem of infinity, and he realizes that Shiva is close by. His consciousness expands in aspiration and love because When God comes to you, it's hard to resist his presence. You want to run back to him. So Arjuna is preparing to go to Shiva, and suddenly it's interrupted by a great big sound. It comes from the outside, and it's accompanied by rushing footsteps. And he opens his eyes, and he sees this wild boar, which is the size of a house, running towards him with the obvious intent of causing him grievous bodily harm. He's a warrior after all, so there is his bow and arrow right next to him. In this smooth motion, he uncurls himself from the seated full lotus position, gets into a standing position, cinches an arrow into his great bow, which is as tall as he is, pulls it all the way to his ear, and it's vibrating with the stored up potential energy, and he releases the arrow. The arrow flies into the boar, finds its mark, embeds itself into the boar's heart. And even as this is happening, he sees another arrow coming whooshing from the opposite direction. And this arrow seems to be slightly bigger, slightly faster, and perhaps a little more accurate. And it too whooshes in and embeds itself into the heart of this great big boar, the boar which is unable to bear the onslaught of these two great arrows, keels over and falls dead. And Arjuna is angry. He's angry because it's the protocol among people that hunt that once you choose your target, nobody else is allowed to choose the same target. So he's saying, who has committed this blasphemy? I have chosen the wild boar. I am Arjuna. I'm the greatest warrior. So he looks around, and then he sees a few feet away from him a tall and majestic hunter with a smirk on his face coming towards him. Then Arjuna says, do you know who I am? And he kind of recites all of his qualifications. You know, I'm MD, PhD, I have this, I have that, and so on. And the hunter says, look, you say that you're a great warrior, but it seems like you're more skilled in talking. If you want to shoot, shoot. The boar is mine. My arrow clearly killed it. If you don't want to shoot, stop talking and go away. Arjuna is very angry. So in the blink of an eye, he shoots 50 arrows. And Arjuna's arrows always find their mark. They are always the fastest. It comes so fast that this hunter, the hunter is just standing there. He's clad in tiger skin, and he himself has a great big bow, but he doesn't do anything. And it's one of those movie slow motion sequences where the bullet is coming towards you, but it's coming in slow motion, so you're able to dodge. The hunter instead casually reaches out with his left hand, holds all of the 50 arrows, and looks at it and says, this is the best you can do, and tosses it aside. Arjuna has never seen anything like this. He's even more angry. And he shoots even more arrows, greater onslaught. But all of those are neutralized. They are not even countered. They are obliterated. It's never happened to Arjuna. People quake when Arjuna's arrow is coming towards them. But his quiver, which is now empty. So he takes his sword, runs towards the hunter, lifts his sword, hits him on the head, and the sword shatters to 1,000 pieces. He has nothing more left. He has a strong body which has been trained both through his basic training, but also through the austerities that he's just performed. He's filled with great energy, and he begins to hit the hunter with his fists, and it feels as if they are mosquito bites that are bothering the hunter. So the hunter, with a casual sweep of his left hand, swats Arjuna away. Arjuna flies through the forest and lands on the forest floor, beaten, battered, bloody, dejected, and defeated. He doesn't know what to do. And then he says, okay, time out. Mr. Hunter, I don't know who you are, but please give me a couple of minutes. I need to regroup here. Hunter says, okay. And he builds a little Shiva lingam. It's the way you worship Shiva out of the mud and dirt of the forest. And he takes his water pot, anoints the lingam with a little bit of water, and places some forest leaves and flowers on it. And then he kneels in front of the lingam and says, O Lord Shiva, Mahadeva, great God, I've always relied on my skill, Lord, and it has always been up to the task. But today somehow you're trying to show me that it is not enough, not by a little bit, but by a large margin. It seems I am completely ineffective against this hunter. So he says, Lord, infinite spirit, fill my body with your boundless cosmic energy and recharge my mind with your determination, not mine, because mine is not enough. And he says, you are the eternal youth in all bodies and minds. So abide within me so that my strength is regained. And he bows his head. And as soon as he does this, an interesting thing happens. It's not what you think. What happens is the flowers and the other offerings that he had put on the lingam vanish. And he says, where did it go? He looks around and he sees that they have appeared on the top of the hunter's head. And the hunter's broad brow is wet, as if from the water that he had anointed the lingam with. And like a flash of lightning, Arjuna sees the truth, and he runs towards the hunter, falls at his feet, says, Lord Shiva, Mahadeva, what have I done? I have been praying for you for these magical weapons all these months. And you arrived in my mind, I felt it, you were right there, I opened my eyes, you were right here. But my ego, my pride as the greatest warrior came in the way, and I did not see you for who you were. He holds up his hand and he says, these hands beat you, my Lord. Can they ever do anything good again? And then Shiva, smiling, assumes his cosmic form, which is as big as the mountains, and he says, it's an important thing, pay attention. He says, Arjuna, you wanted magical weapons. As soon as you wanted them, I was ready to give them to you, and I came to give them to you. But these weapons are so great that they have to be wielded only by a person who desires nothing for himself, by a person who is devoid of his ego. Only then will they kill evil. If it comes from a place of ego, they will obliterate the universe. So before giving you what you prayed for, I had to make sure, I had to test you, my son, to make sure that you were worthy of receiving it. You didn't get it right away, but you got it. Now that your ego is dissolved, you're worthy of having these weapons. So he gives Arjuna the magical weapons, and Arjuna goes on to win the Mahabharata war with the help of Krishna. That's a different story for a different day. But coming back, if God is omnipresent and omniscient, why is it so darn hard to see evidence of his presence? And that's what happened to Arjuna. Well, Arjuna prayed. He wanted magical weapons. He got it, but by praying for something, he had made an implicit pact with God, saying, I will be worthy of that which I pray for. So when we think back in our own lives, all the times that we've prayed, perhaps God has appeared and said, this is what you were here, this is what you wanted. You know, we pray for superpowers in life too. We want to be calm at the center of life storms. We don't want to react in anger. We want to be disciplined in the use of the body, moderate in our eating habits, and we want to be loving of everybody. These are indeed superpowers, are they not? They are not trivial things. And this is what we ask God. You know, initially we kind of ask, okay, give me a house, give me nice clothes, make sure my pizza turns out good, and all those kinds of things. But once we graduate from all of those trivial little things and engage God at a spiritual level, all of our prayers, in a sense, boil down to asking for these magical weapons to face our own battle of life. Has God come and said, well, I'm ready to give it to you, but here's what you need to do. I can recall a time in my life where I just finished my master's in computer science. I had a bachelor's in computer science already. And the reason I'm using this tone is in my head, that was a big achievement. I had a master's in computer science. I'd done quite well academically. And among the computer people, there is a strict hierarchy. They don't talk about it, but this is true. And the hierarchy is at the very, very top. I see at least a couple of computer people here. At the very, very top are people that write the code. They are the ones that do the actual programming, and then they make the computer do magic. And then below them are all the other support personnel. So inherent within this very stratified society of skilled computer people. Everybody wants to be a coder. And that's what I wanted to be. And God was in my life at that time, so I prayed and said, okay, this is what I want to be. And I was interviewed and I got a job in Microsoft, and the job was that of a support engineer. So I had to pick up calls and fix problems that other people are having with weird software that other people wrote. And this was kind of lower part of the totem pole. I did not like it at all, not even a little bit, and I had some acrimonious conversations there, you know, God, why is this happening to me, and that kind of stuff. But later on, I did become a coder, and I did do reasonably well. The irony was, if I hadn't gone through the training of being a support engineer, I would not have had the communication skills to become successful in what I wanted to be successful in. You see, because I knew English very well in the sense that I had a very big vocabulary, but I never spoke it. And that's a very odd place to be, where you can construct extremely long and sophisticated sentences, but they all, anytime you speak, it feels like you're reading a book. And combine that with an accent and really no inflection, no use of contractions, and for a phrase like, hey, how are you doing, is just not something you pick up from book English. So it's tilted. So, and therefore, I had gone inward, not really speaking, and what I wanted, what I had prayed for, had absolutely no chance of becoming a reality unless I acquired the communication skills. So the fact that I got what I prayed for took me probably 20 years to recognize. And I can, unfortunately, see many other incidents in my life which followed a similar pattern, and I bet we all can. So, does God hide himself? Well, what do you think? It's probably not, because what happens is it's very useful to take the attitude that, okay, there's something going on, I pray about it, and then you say, well, what if what is happening right now is exactly what needs to be happening? What if that were the case? So at Ananda, we often ask, what is trying to happen? Because we come to this kind of crossroads and say, well, with the best intentions, we did this and this, and some friction is there, something's not going right. What is trying to happen? Because what that does is, it turns the situation and puts us in a receptive mode. It's like Arjuna, it's like, oh, I see now, you are the one I had been seeking. So that attunement is very, very important. Paramahansa Yogananda, whose teachings we follow here, he often used to give an example. That is, imagine 1 million cubic feet of air. And that's approximately, I calculated, it's the size of 10 such buildings. All the air in 10 such buildings. Then you compress it, you compress it, you compress it, and you compress it to about a square of 1 inch thick. Okay? And the air will compress into that much. That's physically possible. Then what happens if you poke a hole in it? It'll expand and expand and expand and expand until it goes back to what it was, which is occupying 1 million cubic feet. Does it not? That's exactly how our consciousness is, that it's been compressed, 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 compressed with the identification with the body, or self-identifications. Arjuna saying, I'm a great warrior, how dare you kill my wild boar, that kind of stuff. So when we let the consciousness of God, when we become receptive to the consciousness of God, it's called attunement, then Yogananda, again, he used to quote, often, to all those that received him, to them he gave the power to become the children of God, to become the sons of God. So that attunement, inviting the consciousness of God into us, enables God and Guru, and I'll use God and Guru interchangeably for the next 3 or 4 minutes, it helps God and Guru work through this, taking this 1 cubic inch of consciousness and create a channel that expands into it. Some strategic, explosive work needs to be done in order to open this up. And that's when we commit to a spiritual path and sincerely pray to God, sometimes that's where divorces and disease and this and that, all of those things that we go through, that's where it comes from, is, this too is a blessing. This too is something that you're working through me. So whether you're on the spiritual path, for the purposes of self-realization, just the biggest goal, whether you're part of an organization like Ananda doing great big work, or you're here as an individual doing your personal relationship with God, everything that we do has to increase attunement, whether it's the meditation, the seva, the service work, the satsang gatherings like this. If they don't increase attunement, they are not that useful. So here I'm going with it, because God does not hide our identifications need to become less so that we can feel His presence that is already there. That's why the importance of daily or twice daily meditations, if you can. And in the meditation, after all the techniques, sit there and feel the Guru's presence. Say, what is it that you desire from me? And take the time in an unbiased way, listening to the answer. That's attunement. So it's not that I follow part of what you said. I want the magical weapons, Shiva, but I still want to be the greatest warrior and everybody to laud me as the greatest warrior. That's the wrong kind of both and. That's wanting the cake and eating it too. That doesn't work. So, and also talk to the Guru outside of the meditation room. Every little thing, big thing, what is it that you would do? What is it that you wish me to do? Things like that. And most importantly, it is living in the consciousness that what if everything that's happening to me right now is a result of absolutely the greatest blessing and is leading me very surely to what it is that I seek. And it's that, if you close your eyes and think of that one thing that you wish were different in your life, what if that was the one thing, the reason why we incarnated here, and therefore not wanting that one thing anymore might really be the way to getting the magical weapons that we seek. So, does God hide Himself? Yes, He does. From the senses, God cannot be found in the dirt of matter, as Yogananda said. He does, so that we can open the eyes of intuition through attunement. And then, like Shiva for Arjuna, He's right there with a smile. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Amen.
Bird sings of freedom as we soar.